Hello everyone, it's Becca from Becca Books and Bujo, and today we are talking about my best books of 2023. So as I said, we are going to talk about the best books that I read in 2023. And I'm not going to do this in any sort of order except for the order that I read them during the year. I know some people rank their books from like 10 to 1 being the best book of the year or something like that, but I am just going to list off some amazing 5 stars that I will think about for a long time to come. If you're interested though in my best book of the year, a video will be coming out tomorrow where I do a book bracket and I put a lot of these books head to head to figure out my best book of 2023. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about these best books that I have here. So in talking about these books today, I am actually just going to tell you why I loved them so much. I'm not going to give too much of a synopsis because I figured that I talked about all of these in wrap-ups throughout the year. So if you're curious, you can check out my wrap-ups. I will link them down below. But I just want to tell you why these books ended up on my best books of 2023. So let's start with the first one, which is Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr. And this one, I think, was just a masterpiece of writing. Anthony Doerr weaved 3 different timelines together from like the 1500s, present day, and then like the future, 50, 80 years in the future. And it was just phenomenal how they all came together, and he kept you guessing the whole time as to why these stories were going to make sense together in one book. And I loved it. It was huge. It was like a huge, it's a huge book, right? And I'm just noticing I have bent pages. But I was never bored. I was always excited. There was maybe one timeline that I loved the most and one timeline that I didn't like as much, but I still just loved it. And the way that Anthony Doerr can write 2 timelines or 3 timelines like this and weave together this amazing story was just perfect for me. So this is my first best book of 2023. Next up, we have a romance. This is Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. And I don't know, Ali Hazelwood just does it for me. 2 of her books have been 5 stars and a couple of others were 4, and so she's just a really great author for me in general. I like her romances. I know they follow a pretty typical formula, but it's a formula that works for me, so not gonna hate it. But Love Theoretically, I actually read early before it came out, and I thought I was super cool being able to do that, so maybe that factor led to me liking this more, but I also loved the slow burn. It was the slowest burn of a romance you could possibly get. I think I checked and it was like the first kiss was at 72% or something crazy like that. I loved being able to see the characters form a relationship before there was any sort of romantic connection. I mean, the romantic connection was there, but no actual physical things. So that was good. I also just appreciated the growth that the female character did. Can't even remember her name, but she had a lot going wrong in her life, and we were able to just go through everything with her and see how she was able to overcome some of those things. So I really loved this romance. Next on the list is As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow by Zulfa Katu, and this one made it to the list mostly because it made me sob in multiple parts. I love a book that makes me cry. If you don't know that about me yet, hi, I'm Becca. I love a book that makes me cry. So this one definitely did it. Other reasons why this makes the list is I sat and read the last 200 pages in one sitting with my children like running around me. I was able to stay so focused on this book. I mean, don't worry, my children were also being taken care of. But the fact that I couldn't put this down really said something. And then there was like a jaw-dropping realization and twist that just made me love this book even more. It's a YA, but I feel like it's not just for young adult readers. It is for everyone, and just a really touching story about the war in Syria and how one young woman gets through it with the people that she surrounds herself with. So Such a good book. The next book on this list is so good that I have it lent out to someone. This is Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis. I know that a lot of people didn't like this book, but also a lot of people loved this book, and I was in the camp that loved it. I loved Elizabeth Zott as a character. She was phenomenal. She was a great role model for other women during the 60s, 70s when this book took place, and I just thought that she was truly herself in everything that she did and wasn't apologetic about that. And I think that many women could look up to her as a role model. I enjoyed the story. I loved how she took her love of chemistry and knowledge in chemistry and put that into something where she could actually get some traction. I know it was unfortunate that it had to be on a cooking show for women, but she was able to make a great life and audience and do something ultimately that she loved. So yeah, great book. I loved it. Next on my best books is Hello Stranger by Catherine Center. I really love Catherine Center's books so far. I guess I've really only read The Bodyguard and Hello Stranger, but she writes a good romance and I appreciate that. This one I loved because it just was like a feel-good book for me. I was reading it in the summer. I can distinctly remember I was at our family cabin and I picked it up and felt happy reading it, and so that was great. I also definitely knew what was going on before I feel like other people maybe knew what was going on. This character, this woman, was dealing with face blindness, and so she was dating two men but having a really difficult time remembering who was who because she had this face blindness, obviously. And yeah, I distinctly remember talking to my sister about it, and she was like, "What? Did you know what was going on the whole time?" Because I just turned the last page and realized what happened, and I knew the whole time. But that didn't take away any enjoyment for me. I just really liked it. I think it was interesting reading about this face blindness. There's actually a technical term, prosopagnosia. And so it was interesting learning about something that I really had never heard of before. It was cool, and in romance, it just worked for me. So this was a good one for me. I voted for it in the Goodreads Romance Award, and it was number 20 on the list, and you know what? That's fine. I stand by it. I really loved it. Now I think we're getting out of order in how I read these. My list obviously was going all over the place, but the next best book I have is The Help by Kathryn Stockett. I'm not surprised that this is on the list. It is just a phenomenal historical fiction written about a white woman who is writing about black women and their perspective in the South as being maids for white families. It was hilarious, it was heartbreaking, and it was just a really perfect historical fiction in my eyes. I don't think I have to say much more about it because it really speaks for itself. Another book I have lent out because of how good it is Notes on an Execution by Dania Kukafka. This is a kind of mystery thriller about a man who is on death row. We know he's on death row because he has killed multiple people, and we get his life in snippets from the women in his life, from a sister of one of his victims, from his mother, and from his niece, I believe. But then we also get some of his perspective directly from him. So I don't know why this book was so great for me, but I think the way that we got into this person's brain and almost felt for him because of how the women around him were feeling for him, it just, I don't know, it hit me. It worked. The writing was also really wonderful. I just felt like I couldn't put the book down. So I really loved this book. We've got a very eclectic mix here because the next one is Verity by Colleen Hoover. It maybe is controversial that this is on my favorite list for the year, but it was a really good book, you guys, and it kept me reading, turning the pages, and the last chapter if you know, you know. Yeah, I mean, it was just a really, really great thriller. Some of the things with the romance was like questionable, but I still was there for it. I mean, I enjoy Colleen Hoover's books. While some of the things are a little bit unbelievable that they could actually happen in real life, that's what a book is supposed to do, at least in my eyes. It is supposed to take you somewhere else and make you enjoy the process. This definitely did. So yeah, it was the page turnery aspects of this that made me love it so much, and obviously the twist at the end that was like, what? So yeah, best book, fine. It's a best book of 2023, and I'm not ashamed. We are getting some random piles here. Okay, next up we have a sweet middle grade. We have Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. I don't know what was so great about this one. Probably that I saw myself a lot in Anne. She was kind of an odd little girl and chatty, and I think I was that. I was a weird girl who wanted to read all the time and talk to adults, and yeah, so I saw myself a lot in Anne, and I just loved this simple story about a girl finding her family. And I hope to continue on with this series in the near future. A book that I don't own, but I would love to. Hopefully I'll get a copy sometime soon, but this is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. I loved this book so much. I think what got me so excited about it right away at the beginning was the fact that it took place in Waukon, Iowa, which holds a significant place in me and my husband's lives because that is where we bought our wedding rings for each other. Willie got my engagement ring there, and then we got our wedding rings there. And I don't know, Willie and I live in small towns, and I just loved this small town vibe in Part of Your World. It's about a girl from a big city falling in love with a small town boy, and her just kind of learning to love living in a small town, and I got that. I completely understood how this main character was feeling about falling in love with a small town. I grew up in a larger city, I would say, not like a metropolis by any means, but grew up in a larger city, and I thought I would never want to live in a small town, and I definitely see the perks in living in a small town, and I think Alexis saw that in this book. I think that's Alexis. Alexis and Daniel. Maybe I'm making that up. But anyway, so I loved that, and the romance was just like on point. I really enjoy Abby Jimenez's books. She also just has some depth with her romance. It's not always just romance on the surface. There is usually something else going on. In Part of Your World, it is an age gap that is really concerning for Alexis. And so I just like digging into that and not just being about, you know, the fun, sexy things. Anyway, really great romance. I think that I'm not alone in saying that this is a wonderful book. Next on my best books is Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. This is the first time I've ever read Octavia E. Butler, and I really liked it. I've heard that this is a great way to jump into her kind of sci-fi writing, and I would agree. It was especially for me because I'm a historical fiction reader, and so this was a great mashup of historical fiction and sci-fi. I don't know what it was about this one. I think the time travel aspect is really cool to me. I have read some time travel books lately and really enjoyed them, and I think that Kindred fits into that category really well. But then I think the spontaneity of when this main character is going to time travel is very interesting, and I loved just going along with her in this journey, and when she would go back in time, when she would come back to her present. It was just really a great story, and yeah, loved it. I hope to read more of Octavia E. Butler. Next on the list is a sci-fi again. This is, again, very eclectic mix here, but we've got Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This, I don't know, I think it's space. This one took place in space the whole time, and it just was phenomenal. I loved finding out new bits of information with the main character. Andy Weir was able to write that really, really well. And yeah, something about space has always intrigued me and fascinated me. And so I have loved everything by Andy Weir, The Martian, now Project Hail Mary. And yeah, it was just really, really great. And the fact that our main character is like stranded in the middle of nowhere and we just get to go along with them. I mean, this happened in The Martian, it happened in Project Hail Mary, how they're gonna survive. And it's just like thrilling and amazing, and like it keeps your brain working because there's actual science behind some of this stuff. And yeah, just really, really great sci-fi. And if you haven't read it, I definitely recommend listening to it on audio because it's a phenomenal experience in and of itself. All right, the penultimate book on my list is The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. This is a big surprise for me because I didn't like The Secret History by Donna Tartt, and so reading this book, I was convinced I was not going to like it, especially with it being like 800 pages, almost 800 pages. But something about this book got me, and I believe it's the character. This is a book, a tome, that's written about one central character, and we get to follow along in his life as he grows, as he learns, as he discovers who he is going to be as a person. And I loved it. I don't know. I listened to it, which I think helped me get through some of the slower spots. I feel like this book could have been accomplished in a lot less pages, but I'm glad that it wasn't because I enjoyed it. But knowing that, there was just definitely some slow parts. But I was there for it because I loved to see what was going on with our main character, Theo. And it just helps that my son's name is Theo, and so it was kind of fun to have that connection. Anyway, yeah. Really, really great book, and I think that the other part that made me like it was the suspense and intrigue of not knowing what was going to happen with Theodore and this painting that came into his life very early on. So I wanted to obviously know how that was going to come into play, but it never did. It would come up and then it would just go past it. And so we finally got more of that obviously toward the end of the book. And so it was a very, very, very slow suspense of figuring that out, but I enjoyed it. So yeah, really, really amazing book for me. And last on the list is Evil Eye by Etaf Rum. I just very recently read this one, and so this is a late addition to my list, but I just really, really resonated with the main character. She is a young mom dealing with depression and trauma from her past, and I don't know, it just hit me. I cried. I loved it. If you want to hear more about my thoughts, I actually read it for my Goodreads reading vlog, and so I'll link that up above. But I don't know, I think I just saw myself so much in Yara, and I loved reading about someone like me on the page. So that's why this book is on the list. Let's see, I think it was maybe 14 books? Yeah, 14 best books of 2023, which is great. We will see how they all stack up in my book bracket that I'm going to be posting tomorrow. But yeah, some really, really phenomenal books. Let me know if you have read any of my best books of 2023 and what you thought of them. If they weren't your cup of tea, that's great. I'd love to have some conversation with you down below as to why. But also, if you loved them, let me know, and we can rave about them together. Thank you so much for watching. Like this video on your way out. Consider subscribing to my channel if you'd like to see more bookish and bullet journaling content from me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!